Right. Well, thank you everybody for joining our Coaching from the Soul light-hearted conversation. And it's nice to have you all here today. And in our little pre-discussion, we had from Noki who had said that kind of what is a miracle was kind of one of the questions that was coming up for him today. So really intrigued to see where that goes. And I'm going to hand over to Noki to kick our discussion off. Thanks, Naoki.
Hello, everyone, wherever you are in the world today. Um, well, I did not expect to be on a hot seat today, but so let's go from there. Let's see what I just posed the question. What is a miracle? Well, there's something that everyone can, ask themselves. What is a miracle? What would you consider is a miracle? Would that mean like $10 showing up in your pocket suddenly? Your mother being cured from cancer? Just being able to wake up the next morning? What is a miracle to you? It's a question that really is no one can really answer other than yourself. What seems to be a miracle for one person may be an everyday event to someone else. If we were to look back in history, it's like the last 100 years of humanity, Western civilization, modern civilization, almost everything that we've done in this civilization would be considered a miracle in the Middle Ages. Just this particular venue where we're kind of talking to each other across the world, communicating, that just wasn't in their consciousness. So for me, if I were to kind of define what is a miracle, and this is just a definition from that's my point of view, it's not your definition. Um, to me, a miracle would be anything that we would consider beyond our capacity to understand within the consciousness that we're at. I think I remember, I'm just recalling a quote from Albert Einstein saying something to the nature of, you can't solve the problems at the level of thinking that created the problems. I wouldn't start instead of thinking, I would say at the state of consciousness that it was created at. So we have a problem that's insolvable at this moment. Then we have to get beyond a certain level of, we have to go to a different level of consciousness. In the modern era, what we call the modern era, I'm not so sure how modern we really are, considering, the start of the modern era was 2 world wars. So we did an extraordinary good job of killing each other at a level that was unprecedented. But there was but it was also an era where, say, for example, electric light was created. And for once in humanity, at least from, what we know of history, light was available I mean, today, for example, light is available almost everywhere. In deepest kind of parts of the jungle, if you see a satellite image, it's like, oh my gosh, the whole world is lit up. Oh, but let's just imagine what that would have taken a century ago. Or the whole world would have been on a bonfire, basically. So, but now we can do that without fires, like wood fires, but with a little bit of electricity. I would consider that an incredible miracle. And coming back to what John was sharing earlier about, taking care of ourselves, our bodies, and what Graham was sharing about how do we know if we're on the right path? Well, I'm just going to share a personal story about my own personal health. I've been struggling for 40 plus years. I'm 57 with a neck condition that kind of culminated with in 2001. Sorry, 2003 was the year before my daughter was born. I woke up one morning, literally, with lectures like it was like I put my fingers in a 240-volt socket and electricity, like jolts of electricity were running down my right leg, my right side of my body. And I woke up with severe pain in my back and my neck. I could barely get out of bed. And I went to see my conventional doctor, and I went through all kinds of tests. They said, well, she said that, I basically have severe cervical spondylosis. Now, if you're a doctor, if you've ever had that condition yourself, it basically means the cervical joints in your neck had collapsed, and all the cartilage had collapsed or disappeared, and basically the bone was rubbing against bone, and your nerves were getting pinched. And they said there was nothing they can do for me. I had two options: suffer or surgery that had back then at least, and even today, a 50-50 chance of it getting better. So in other words, a coin flip. So I chose no thanks. I went to see, I tried a whole bunch of different modalities. The only one that really worked was going to an acupuncturist at the time to kind of at least reduce the symptoms, and it worked. And 30 years later, I still had certain conditions. Some other conditions got worse, like my lower spine, where the joints there were collapsing and they were grinding against each other. Now, anyone that has lower back pain, if you have lower back pain, sitting becomes a chore at best. I've tried everything, like everything. You name it, I did it. So, and I was starting to give up. Even the acupuncturist wasn't really working that well anymore. And I started a spiritual path around 2011. And that condition didn't really change much. It got worse though. And a friend and a colleague who is a healer, a spiritual healer, suggested going to a certain place because he had experienced incredible miracles there from other people and himself and his family. And I went to that place. I had nothing to lose, quite frankly. So, and the next day afterwards, it happened. My lower back pain disappeared. And then I did my testimony a few months later. And I said that I opened up for a greater miracle. And the greater miracle happened. What was that? It was my neck. Now, how did that happen? I have no bloody clue. I tried everything else. I went to the conventional doctors. Was it just all in my head? Could have been. Did I inherit it? Well, they couldn't figure out whether it was inherited or not. They said it wasn't any signs of inheritance in some genetic condition. My mother couldn't remember anything traumatic happening when I was a kid, when I was born. I didn't have a fall when I was about, I don't know, 18 or 19. I wrote a letter for 2 stories onto a solid concrete floor. And I got taken to the hospital by my employer. But you know what I had out of that was a little scratch in my head or something like that. They didn't see any injury in my back or anything like that. That was a bit of a miraculous recovery, really. I mean, who falls 2 stories onto a concrete floor and comes out with a little scratch in their head? So that was the only thing that I could attribute to that, but they didn't attribute anything to that. So to me, the taking care of your body, there's only so much you can do for your body, but certainly it does start with noticing, is your body telling you something right now? Like, are we listening to our body? I got a headache today. What's that telling me? There could be a number of reasons why I get a headache. I know my daughter gets headaches from pressure from when a storm's coming in, or if I eat something and I barf an hour later. And that's happened, I got food poisoning from eating somewhere at a restaurant, bad sushi or whatever. Um, the one that is hard to notice as a body, the physical presence of your body, is the one that is so chronic that it's a little bit every day. It's just like your leg is sore and you kind of massage it because it goes and then it goes away temporarily. And then it comes back again a couple weeks later. But the body's telling us something. And it's up to us to pay attention. But in our society, John talked about how people have anxiety in this world. We live in a society that tells us to ignore our body. Venture on, be strong, sacrifice you for the greater good. Usually our jobs. But what good are you going to be if you collapse tomorrow? My body collapsed after working like a dog. How do you know if you're on the right path? I don't know. I was going on every single path I possibly could for 30 years. And finally, I came to the right one. I guess, if you're on the right path, if the condition that you're hoping to get healed or, resolved is getting better, not worse. But, it's like we discussed earlier, it's like, well, what if you're the golfer that goes out and practices badly every day and you're just ironing in your bad habits? I did a lot of that, I think. So what is a miracle? It's all up to us, really, in the end. How big or small of a miracle is. I understood in the Bible that Jesus couldn't heal in his own small town. So, you would think that was the place that he would be able to heal everyone. No, not a single being was healed in that town. Why was that? Contemplating on that. It's like, why is that? For miracles to happen, in my opinion, it's just opinion. You got to be open to a miracle. How open am I to a higher state of consciousness that allows me to be open to the possibility that everything else that worked doesn't mean that there's something else available that will work. And it may mean that I had no clue was there or beyond my level of thinking of what is possible. What's possible? Everything's possible. Our modern society has kind of proven it to some degree, materially anyways. Spiritually, We'll see. Let's share. Let's share our miracles. We all have miracles. I know it. Every single one that's here has a miracle. You can speak about at least one miracle in your life. I'm positive that's the case. Whether we know it's a miracle or not. Well, here's another one. Every breath's a miracle. Have you ever considered what it takes to have a single breath? Have you tried breathing? Force yourself to stop breathing? Try for 10 minutes. Try for 5 minutes, see what happens. You can't force you to stop breathing. So what is driving this breath that we have no control over, really, in the end? Let's pass it on, Graham.
Thank you. There was a lot in there to think about for sure. Yeah. John, I saw you came off mute. I wondered if you wanted to speak. Happy.
Yeah, I'd like to say a few things. Yeah,
Mm.
I'm wondering, did we witness the miracle of Edwin finally being able to join the call? The miracle
Yeah.
of technology, that might be a miracle. I love Einstein quotes, and when you talk about miracles, there's a quote that I remember from him where he said that there's two ways to live your life. One is if everything is a miracle, and the other as if nothing is a miracle. And Einstein said, I choose the former. He chooses to live his life as if everything was a miracle. And then towards the end of what you were sharing, Noki, you asked the question which hit hard at me: how open am I to a miracle? That hit me hard, because I wonder, how open am I to a miracle? I love what Einstein said, and I think there's loads of miracles, but I wonder, how open am I to a miracle in my life? Because there are things that I have prayed for that I believe would be miraculous, and they haven't happened. So it's a question that I'll sit with, and yet I can sit and look at a spider's web and and think it's miraculous, just to see how a spider makes a web, or watching plants grow in my garden over the seasons and come and go, and sitting with nature, or just watching the sea, and I can see miraculous things in that. I saw a guy used to have a sore neck, dancing his head off in a bar in Austin, Texas. That must have been a miracle as well. So yeah, there's loads of miracles, but I'm going to sit with that. How open am I to a miracle? That's what I'll be sitting with for a while. So thanks for that challenge. Okay.
Yeah, thank you both. I think as I was listening to that, I was thinking, well, it feels like in both, like how open am I? There's such a power to hope, isn't there? I think that's what I feel I've seen. And to the story about, like, can we control our breathing? Like when we stop and when we realize that actually our mind or our body is trying to tell us something. And I think, Naoki, you talked about like being more conscious, then I think when we see that as like a friendly nudge, there's like such a power in that versus seeing it as, oh, there's something wrong. Like for me, I guess a few years ago, thankfully now, but had like quite an extended period of depression, and I quite often find that I'd just sit and not be able to do anything or lie down or whatever it was. But most of that time, I think my thinking was saying, "There's something wrong with you. You're never going to get through this. Oh, you're useless. Like what's going on here?" And yet, when I did eventually come out of the other end of that, and in my case, that was with some help of some therapy or counselling. But what I really saw afterwards, looking back, was how, oh, like the design of the system was right. Just kind of saying, well, slow down, like, or even, well, this is what that thinking feels like. How about us not thinking that way? And really, what I saw as I kind of came through that was, well, the practical side of things was just start doing things you used to enjoy, because actually you'll find you enjoy them again. And slowly I did. But actually, what I see nowadays is that was taking me out of my thinking. So I'd go and do something and forget the thinking that was holding me down. And then, the more I did that, the more I came back to being me. And I don't think I've shared it in this forum, but I remember looking back at I had some scribbles of that time. I was like recording like little red and green dots that each week I'd see how many red dots and green dots I had. And I remember looking back and seeing that actually the same thing was a red dot at the start and a green dot at the end, just because I thought about it differently. Like I think it was something mundane, like going to McDonald's. Like, I've been to McDonald's, I'm eating badly, red dot. And yet, a few weeks later, it was like, I've been to McDonald's, I've got out, I had a good time, green dot. And I was like, hang on a minute, but the thing is no different. It was just how I chose to look at it. So, yeah, that feels a bit like a miracle, that there's so much power in the way that we're thinking. And yeah, I mean, your question, John, was like, how open am I? It almost leads me to like, what else is the system telling me? Like, that's my question that comes up at the end of that. Like, and I mean, Noki, you talked about giving up. Like, for me, the one thing I do see consistently is that whatever challenge I have, I give up and an answer comes. Like, that for me is a miracle. Even smaller day-to-day tasks or challenges or things I want to do, or little technical things that aren't working. A night's sleep and a shower, usually some idea comes. Like, for me, yeah, like where does that come from? And oh, I can trust that, like that. Yeah. And that for me is back to that, the idea of the answer coming from within, like not outside. And like, I think I'm working on that one. Like, so often when I think I don't know something, I think, right, I've got to go and learn that on the course. But actually, so often when I don't know something, I pause and the answer comes from somewhere. And that's interesting too, isn't it? I wonder how often we pause just to listen to that. That's what comes up for me. I wonder if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, what's been coming up to me is I've loved what you guys have been sharing there. Is the power and the innocence of our thinking. And for me, Noki, when you asked about what's a miracle, is there, for me, a miracle is when there's something that I didn't think was possible, which would explain why, if we've all got our own thinking, we've all got our own different versions of what a miracle is for us. And so often when we get quiet and we hang out in this space more, part of that's a willingness, I think, to consider that our thinking isn't necessarily right. So there is that possibility beyond that for whatever world we've created for ourselves with that thinking. And Graham, as you were talking there about the different experiences of exactly the same external event, I was reminded yesterday, I went down to London by train. No incidents on the way down, but on the way back, as soon as I walked into the station, I could tell by the number of people there that the trains weren't running on time. Something had gone on. And it struck me how different my experience of that was yesterday as some of the other times when I've experienced that. Because I was just in a really lovely space of thinking. As far as I was concerned, it gave me time that I didn't think I was going to get to go and cash in a free voucher for a free cookie I could have. Yay, free cookies. And I could just sit and catch up with some of the stuff I hadn't had time to catch up with earlier in the day. And when we finally got on the train, having taken part in the competitive dash across the Concorde as the platform was announced the last minute, it was, we were stopping because all the trains were running late. It meant we kept having to stop throughout practically every signal. So when I was approaching the station to get home, I found myself going, oh, I know how our train system runs. I know if it's over an hour late, I can apply to get the full refund back. And I was watching the clock going, well, this is interesting. I think we'll get in just like 30 seconds before that full hour's up. So I was actually cheering when we got held up at the final signal before, because it meant that, yay, I can apply for the full refund instead of half the price of the ticket. That's such a different thought experience in my head as I was watching all that through, where traditionally I could have been cursing the fact that, oh, it's typical, I just really want to get home and I've got so much to do, etc. And it was a really lovely experience, despite the fact that the external stimulus there was exactly the same. So, that's just a lovely reminder of, we live from the inside out. We live the feeling of our thinking there. And when we're prepared to and willing to just consider that's a possibility of how we are, that's where the chunk of light for the miracle can happen is. So yeah, that's what was occurring for me as you guys were so beautifully sharing there.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, I think it might not be possibly right, or might possibly not be right. Yeah, even that slightest doubt, I think, is what opens up. Like, I think we've talked before about this idea of the wonder of possibility, but that glimmer of something else, and as you say, like examples there of the same thing externally, but just a completely different whole day's worth of experience or weeks of experience because of seeing something a bit differently. I wonder, Edwin, is there anything coming up for you as we've been having this discussion?
Yeah, yeah, Graham. I love the sharings and the feelings around them. And the question that I think was Naoki who posted it, and then John kind of mentioned it again. How open we are to miracles, and aren't we miracles? And if we are, do we need to be open to them? If we create our own reality from our own thinking, can we create miracles? And we were talking about it, and I was listening, and from my perspective, I've always associated a miracle with an event, that defies my own expectations or natural laws. And I think traditionally, it's seen as something that is something external that happens to us. But I now like to believe, especially from this understanding, that maybe a miracle is just a profound shift in my internal world that transform how I perceive the external world. Just that moment of deep insight, that true connection with my innate wisdom. It's an experience that transcends my usual way of thinking. I see how I choose to see life now, which is completely different from the way I did it before. And to me, that's a miracle. Because I like to believe that that's the source of those miracles happen to be within us. Our thoughts and consciousness shape our experience of reality. And when we perceive a miracle, it might be a reflection of the shift in our own thinking. That moment that we've been fighting to get to, we just didn't know it, or we didn't know how to do it. And now we're able to see beyond our habitual thinking, beyond these freaking thought patterns that always been there. And now we're able to connect with ourselves and with the truth deeper. That's really what's coming up for me.
More thought-provoking again. I think I love this question, can we create miracles? That feels an interesting inquiry too. We've already talked about, our experience of the world is so much based on how we're feeling or thinking on a given moment or day. But I've certainly seen, going through a different career change, for example, my current place, that so much is based on how I'm feeling in a moment. If I'm feeling good, or we talked about well-being, often it's a walk that untangles my mind. Just things flow, and actually there's a joy in seeing that wonder of what might happen. Whereas it's very easy, particularly I think when tired or when just creating these imaginary things of what's not happening, to just come completely out of flow. And again, I love this idea of well, I mean, I don't quite know how that links to staying positive, but if everything we've talked about is we're creating that reality, then why not create a reality where actually we're having fun? And how much more in flow would that be? That strikes me as a interesting experiment for sure.
When we were I happened to be online. You guys were in London, and one of the things that I committed to do was to try to experience life without giving myself so much shit about it. No judgment. And I remember having a conversation with John, and John says, you know, sounds easier. But doing it is, and you know, what I've come to realize, it is much harder to give myself shit and judge myself than not. There is more effort to it. And it's not that things don't bother me, because they still do, but I don't give myself shit because they bother me. So there is a lot less thinking about. And to your point, Ram, you know, can you said if it's a thinking, can we create art? And even when we don't create the kind of now that we want to, are you really experiencing that? Or you give yourself shit because you're not experience the one you would like it? And to me, that is a game changer. You know, I've adopted I like to say maybe insane, you know, habit of, as soon as I put my foot on the floor in the morning, I said, okay, how many things I'm gonna fuck up today? You know, and it brings this freaking joy on me. And when I do it, I'm reminded of that. And it's no longer a big problem. And to me, from my perspective, living life the way I'm doing it right now, the way I choose to do it, it is a freaking miracle.
Yeah, that inquiry of things aren't going well, is that because things aren't going well or because I'm thinking that they should be going differently? And what am I feeling in that moment? Is it the things not going well or my thinking? And yeah, I think, yeah, well, I think what we're talking about is, for me, I've certainly seen how it feels like it's mostly one, but I suspect it's always one, and it's always thinking.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm going to go on the miracle offensive now. So what Edmund's just reminded me of, that stop giving yourself shit whenever things go wrong. And I've got that. That's fine. But I am passively letting shit happen and not giving myself annoyance over it, not getting annoyed over it, seeing that it's thought, seeing it for what it is, knowing that I'm going to be all right. And that's fine, but it's passive. So I'm now going to become a miracle offensive. Instead of defense, it's going to be offense. I'm going to go out and create some miracles and create some joy and create some happiness in my own life, instead of just saying, yeah, that wasn't a nice experience, but it'll pass. You know, I'm going to go out and create nice experiences and enjoy it. And that's the inspiration that comes from listening to you guys. You know, isn't it? I think it's wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, Noki, for that serious prompt at the start of
Yes,
this evening. That was,
absolutely.
you know, you might be a bit of a bollocks at times, but you're okay when you promote a question like that.
I love your thought process, John.
Yeah, that's an Irish term of affection, by the way.
Man, you really love him.
Yeah.
Mm.
I love what Edwin was saying about creating miracles, and what some of the things that came up in that time period. And I love what everyone shared, because it was just a question, just opened up so many things and different points of views. And it's all valid. None of it is, let me rephrase that. It's all valid. And I was just thinking about how the modern era really started, was from this quote from Descartes. I think it's Descartes, and I really hated that philosophical stuff. But I think he said, I think, therefore I am. The implications of that is our modern era is all about thinking. What if we were to flip that and say, I was reminded of something I came up with in my school thesis in 2001. And I came across that quote and I said, you know, what if we feel, therefore we are? I feel, therefore I am. What would be the implications of that? I feel, therefore I am. And this is kind of segues into like the 3 Ps about the feeling. And also it's like this whole joy of like creating our world and kind of perceiving shit. Well, we can perceive shit as kind of smelly and gungy and whatever. Or we can perceive it like a kid does and say, oh, let's have some fun with this. It's like Play-Doh. A farmer, our farmer sees shit as, wow, I can grow more crops. You know, it's like, it's all in our perception. And if, you know, it's like, somehow we allowed our world to no longer be so fun. Everything's become so serious. And then I'm including myself in there. And if the world was fun again, like if we were having a lot more fun at our jobs, our everyday lives, where it's just fun and our perceptions of it was just fun. Oh, why, you know, whatever's happening is bugging me right now. Oh, well, what if it's like we can say, I don't like my thinking about that, but how can I make this fun at this moment? So let's make it a joke. I don't know. I have no idea. So it's kind of like, but it's a perception of, and that's what I kind of saw with all you guys. I'm seeing with myself was this, how can I change my perception around what I think is not fun into fun? So, and Jen did that, you know, it's like about being at the train station. I was like right there with her. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm late again. This is going to be late again. Instead of, I got an hour now to do all the stuff that I didn't really want to do. And I get my cookie and I get my free cookie. So, and it's free, you know, I get free right back. Oh, what a different change of perception. Then I'm sure that Jen had a much nicer night because of that, instead of beating herself up about missing a train by 1 minute. So
Absolutely.
we create our own miracles. If life is a miracle, what does that make us?
That feels like a beautiful point to end on, Noki, and thank you for starting this off so beautifully as well, like, and to everyone else for all of those. Like, I love that idea of I don't like my thinking about that. How can I look at that differently? Like, again, just the curiosity in that and the power of that. Like, yeah.
I just
Like-
want to say something before we end it, because I want to make sure that it's on recorded. What the hell is David?
I like it. David, if you're watching this back, we're next on in September. We love your perspective too.
Yeah, we miss you, man.
Kind of like, where's Waldo? He's our Waldo.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. Let me stop our call. Thank you.